Good morning, everyone. Happy October. Can we have Gary Kahn lead us in the pledge and the four-way test?
Hello. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, would you recite this with me? Of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Today, the four-way test means a little bit more to me because with what we're going to present, we hope that it meets all four criteria. Next, I'd like to find out how many we have in Zoom right now to say hello to everyone in Zoom. 32. Welcome everyone on Zoom. Welcome everyone in the room. This is the best place to be on a Friday afternoon. Now I'd like to have George Garmany introduce the guests here today in the room.
Thanks so much, President Chad. Sounds like a month. If you are a visitor or a guest or invited a guest, stand up and we'll introduce you. All right. Come on over.
So I'm proud to have Jared Reese with me, one of my closest friends for a very, very long time, who will be a member of our club at 5 o'clock today, provided that no one objects.
I promise to be on my best behavior for the day.
Oh, well, thank you. We trust you there. Any other visitors or guests, at least in the room? Well, thank you, and we hope to see you back again very soon. So, and Vanessa, I think you're going to take any Zoom visitors.
Alrighty. Yes, if there are any Zoom, is this on? Yes. If there are any Zoom guests, we'd like to welcome you online to our meeting today. I think we have Chuck with us today. If you'd like to unmute yourself and just say hi to us again, Chuck.
If it's Friday afternoon, it must be Boulder Rotary, so even in Seminole, that's what we do.
Thank you, Chuck. So glad you're here with us. And I'm not sure if Nan is a guest. Are you a guest, Nan?
Nope, not a guest,
Right,
but thanks.
Sorry, Nan. I didn't have time to look up. So, but thank you for joining us, and I hope you all enjoy the meeting today. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Vanessa. And Chuck, I talked to my dad this morning. I heard you guys had quite a speaker this morning, so maybe at some point we can attend your meeting virtually as well. A couple of quick announcements. We'd like to congratulate Norma Portnoy. She won the 2021 Boulder County Health Community Award. So if everyone would give her a big hand, that's a really great achievement. And one more quick announcement as a follow-up to last week's meeting. Lynn and I had some discussions yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, and we were talking about some ways to really make the Peace Corps Rotary Collaborative more prominent in our club. Look for this to come in the rib, but what we'd like to do is ask anybody who's a Peace Corps alum to consider recording a quick video for us that we can put on the website. If you don't want to do a video, maybe just write a quick paragraph about where you were, what your experience was like, and we'd like to create a web page on our own site that kind of talks about and highlights some of the Peace Corps efforts that our own club members have undertaken. Everyone, if you would get out your raffle tickets, and while you're doing that, Dr. Peter Ewing has graciously given us his football tickets again this week, which are right here. these tickets right here, I'd like to auction off right now. This is the CU game against the USC Trojans. Tomorrow, noon, Folsom Field, 50-yard line, 59th row, view of the Flatirons, gorgeous day for a football game. So does anyone want to bid on these? Do I hear a starting bid of $50? $50. Anyone, $50. I know we have some USC Trojans in the club. I don't know if they're here today, but I know we do. Anyone, $50, $20, $20. We got $20 over here. We have a Zoom bid. $50 on Zoom. Do I hear 60 in the room? 60 on Zoom, 60 on Zoom, 70 in the room, 70 in the room, 70 in the room, 60 on Zoom, 60 on Zoom, 70 in the room. Anyone? 60 on Zoom. 75 on Zoom, 75. Anyone in the room? This is all on Zoom. Cassidy, do I hear 80? 80. No 80? $75 going once? $100. $100 on Zoom. These are 50-yard line seats, folks. Can't get much better than this. $100. We've got 2 100. Someone's got to make it 101. Do I hear 101, 101, 101, 105, 125? 200. Do I hear 200? 110, 110. Do I hear 115, 120, 115, 115, 115? 110, going once, going twice, sold for 110. Thank you. This is a club first. I hope that awarding someone on Zoom a raffle is okay. But 110, that's great. That's great for our club, and thank you, Dr. Peter Ewing, for giving us these tickets. It was an auction. Here we go. And I'm clearly a trained professional at this. Now for the raffle. If you would take out your tickets and look to see if you have number 724125. I hear a groan. That doesn't count as a win. 724125. Congratulations. All right, if you'll bear with me 1 second here, because I do want to get out a presentation. Okay, sorry for the delay. I want to make sure we have the technology working here. So the goal of what we're doing here is to essentially create a return to normal that is safe and affordable and fair to everybody here in the room. And when I said that we were looking at the four-way test when we came up with some of these ideas, I'm really not kidding. I talked to my dad about this morning, and I said, Dad, I think we found an idea that actually meets all of these. So thanks for the opportunity to present this to you guys. What were we balancing as we came to these conclusions? Well, the first one is that we're a Friday lunch club. When I talk to board members, when I talk to other members of the club, when I talk to past presidents, when I hear other people talking, it's quite obvious that this club wants to be the Friday lunch club. The next thing is an engaging experience. We want this meeting to be the way that we end our weeks. We want it to be something that we're proud of. We want it to be something that fulfills us as people, as a community, and as a group here together. We want safety. Without a doubt, this is a no-brainer. We want our members to be safe, and we're going to take all efforts to make sure that that happens. We want things to be affordable. I think what you will see is that we have tried to keep dues as low as possible while still being responsible in our stewardship of the club. We want everybody to share the cost of operating the club. This experience is the backbone of what we do, and we believe that everybody should share in that expense. And then finally is membership and membership growth. The way that Roots was founded and the reasons that Roots was founded was essentially to make Boulder Rotary more accessible to different types of members, for people who couldn't be here on Fridays or young professionals. And I think that our solution will also carry forth some of those initial ideas of Roots. So a quick lesson on who we are as members. This is all pre-COVID, so I'd like to go through these one by one. I know some of you may know all of this, some of you may not. I certainly didn't know all of this before I started this presentation, so I've actually learned a lot myself. To start, we have the active ordinary members of the club. These are the traditional members who pay full dues. Those dues pre-COVID, the $110, what that does is that covers administrative costs, that covers insurance, that covers Rotary International dues, that covers district dues, it covers the day-to-day operations of the club. The $21 that we were paying was essentially the meal, the experience, the meeting room, the Zoom cameras, all the AV equipment, and even guests and visitors, some of the meal costs that we would pick up for them. The next type of member is active exempt. And these are members who meet the rule of 85. Now, does everybody know what the rule of 85 is? The rule of 85 essentially says that if you're a member of the club for 20 years and you're 65 years of age or older, you meet the threshold of 85. This allows you to be active exempt. Now, your dues, they go to the same things. The $21 per meeting goes to the same things. The only difference is that you're allowed to pay as you go. Now, the third type is the active satellite or Roots group. And as I said, Roots was created to make our club more accessible to different types of members, trying to encourage growth in our membership and get more young professionals who maybe are more challenged on Friday afternoons and getting away, but still want to be actively involved in the good works of the club. They paid $110 per quarter in dues. Those dues went to the same things: administration, insurance, RI, district dues. When they showed up and opted in for a meal, the $21 paid for the same things as everyone else: venue, meals, speaker, AV. They also had the opportunity to pay as you go. So this to me presented some challenges and some inconsistencies. And the board, so many people have helped to figure out a path forward. But these were some of the challenges that we all saw. First of all, we were charging people $26 per meeting, or we were getting charged, I'm sorry, $26 per meal from the Spice of Life. We were charging $21. So right away, we're undercharging. And that doesn't account for all of the other aspects of the room, the Zoom, everything else. We also realized that the cost of this, they weren't necessarily being shared by every member of the club. And then the third part was that you had different status of members that were getting the same types of benefits, pay as you go, for different reasons. So now I'd like to have Brad Weasley come up here. And Brad, I've got your slides going. I can show you how to walk through this real quick, but I'd like to have Brad come up here and talk through some of the dollars and cents and why some of these challenges presented themselves, especially over the last 2 months. So just advance with that.
Okay. Thanks, Chad. So Chad, excuse me, Chad asked me a couple of weeks ago to just talk generally about the club budget, because I think before I was on the board and had any involvement in it, I didn't really understand the budget. I didn't understand anything other than I got a bill every 3 months and I paid it and everything worked out. So the club essentially has two budgets and they are separate pots of money. One is club operations, which is what that $110 funds, plus the meal charges. And then we have the second budget, which is for good works. We have all of the programs that we do our good works with. Scholarships, the spelling bee, everything else that goes towards community benefit. And those are two very separate, distinct budgets. Good works money can never go to pay for operations of the club. That's not something that's possible between the two budgets. At times in the past, operations has had surplus money at the end of the year from what used to be called uneaten meals and maybe some other things. And that money, at the discretion of the board of directors, has been able to go fund some of the good works things when it wasn't needed for operations. So there is a one-way street that's possible there from time to time based on circumstances. So in operations, about 2/3 of our money goes towards Friday meetings, the facility, the meals, and the technology to bring people in on Zoom and to have the meetings here at the JCC and the facilities we were in before. The other third, give or take, goes to everything else: banners, pins, president-elects getting to go to conventions, supporting the district, supporting RI with the dues and so on. So our budget for this year is about $238,000. And again, 2/3 of that goes towards us meeting here in person and having lunch. On the good works side, our budget's just under $100,000. And the vast majority of that is spent by committees. There's a budget process before the year begins where committees specify the money they need. And a lot of it is the same from year to year. I'm also chair of the scholarship committee, resident scholarship committee, and we do scholarships every year. So we get an allotment from the board of directors, we award scholarships, and on we go. Some committees have different projects throughout the year. Some do the same thing, like spelling bee is always spelling bee. And then we have a small amount of money that the board can approve for things that come up. For example, you heard a few meetings ago, Sally Brown talked about doing shelter boxes in Haiti due to the natural disaster. That's an ad hoc thing that the board and the foundation board approved, and we sent money to that. Before that, we sent money to Rotary in Australia for the fires that they had a couple of years ago. So a little bit goes that way, but most of it's for committee projects. All right, so am I missing a slide here? I am. I had one about income. So we get our money for the operations side from the $110 plus the meal charge that goes on. And meal charges have, over the years, been fairly predictable. We knew about how many members. We have a couple hundred club members. We knew that 95 or 100 would show up for a typical Friday, so we ordered those meals. But active ordinary members that Chad just explained, we'd have 140 prepaying for meals for the quarter. And so the cost was lower than the cost per meal because we weren't buying a meal for everybody in the club because we don't have 100% attendance every week. So that's the source of income for operations. The source of income for good works is fundraising. If we don't raise it, we can't spend it. So things like the raffle that you all participated in, or some of you participated in, that benefits our scholarship programs. We have other fundraising things like the gala and so on that raise money for good works. And a lot of that goes through our club foundation. So we have a couple of issues. On the operations side, Chad talked about inflation. Pre-COVID, we were pretty rock solid on our attendance at Friday meetings. Now with COVID, it's all bets are off, based upon surges and so on. And so COVID basically broke the old model of funding the Friday meetings. And as I said, with good works, whatever we raise, we can spend. Plus, we get very generous support from the foundation. And with that, I think we're back to Chad.
So what about today? The last 2 months have given us the opportunity to kind of review a couple of different scenarios, one in actuality and one in theory. And the first scenario is the way that we're operating right now. Essentially, everybody is paying as you go. We're sort of operating on the active exempt routes manner. And we're doing that in the same way that we're calculating meal costs as we were before, as Brad just explained. So how did we get to that number? Essentially what it was 100 was the cost of the meal from Spice times 100, which was essentially our minimum. They required us to have a minimum number of meals per week. And then we divided by that 140, as Brad mentioned. The result over the last couple of months has been a significant loss of resources from the club. The second scenario, the board met several times. I think we've probably had 7 meetings in the last 2.5 months. The second scenario, we realized that we needed to raise dues. So we voted to raise the dues to $125 per quarter and essentially get rid of other membership types and force everybody to pay full paying dues so we could make sure that the club was in full operations. That didn't seem quite fair because you have people that are really, really concerned about COVID, rightfully so, and they're not comfortable being in a room yet with anybody. So how can you rightfully say, hey, you need to pay for every meal that you're not going to attend to be a member of the club? So we tried to find another way that makes everybody responsible for the club itself, that asks everyone to pitch in, that encourages people to be here one way or another, that treats everybody the same, and lastly, that it's fair to all concerned. So what we came up with was scenario 3. And what that is a way to spread the cost of running the club, the way of spreading Friday operations across all 200, give or take, members of our club. We would also like to give the ability for everybody to pay as they go, not just 2 types of members. Now, this is going to be a major shift in how our club operates. So bear with me here as we get through a couple more slides, but I'd like to really go into more detail about what this means. And if I could have Mike Brady come up now to sort of walk through a couple of the different calculations as I go through this slide right here. I'm going to go through this and I'll have you come up. So what we talked about was raising dues to $150 a quarter. That's essentially a $40 increase per quarter. Raising meals to what we're charged. Right now, Spice charges us $28.50. Why are we discounting that if we can't afford to? We also want to migrate to a pay-as-you-go mentality that requires people to RSVP before a meeting. And then we want to give the ability to have an automatic opt-in at a discounted rate. And I can talk a little bit about why we're looking at doing that in a later slide. The result is that it's fair and it's responsible. And now Mike can kind of jump through some of the numbers and really dig in as to why.
Okay, so remember when we used to be over at the Avalon? Once we moved over here about 4 years ago, our membership numbers started to rise. I'm just going to tell you that. The experience of being in this wonderful space was enhanced once we moved from the Avalon over to here. Which at the time was about $575 a week. That was paid for, as Brad and as Chad mentioned, through essentially uneaten meals. We had this many people who were paying and this many people showed up. Okay, so there was a certain delta there. Okay, if you can see my hands, there was a delta, and that helped subsidize the cost, and it also paid for the facilities. Okay, when there are less people, in order to divide the cost of the facility, which is now $625 every single week. Okay, $600. $25 for us to use this as our office every single week. Committee meetings, gathering, community, and also to have a meal. Okay, if none of us have a meal, the club is still going to be out $625. If we keep the price, the dues at $110, okay, And of course, that's paid for all the admin, and we keep the price at $21, we will lose the difference between the $28.50 and the $21 that we charge you, plus the $625. So it's over $1,000 a week if we do nothing. Okay, when he said that the last couple of months has been a drain on the club finances, the answer is yes, it has. Okay, with 60 people showing up, it's about $1,000 every single week. Okay, so it's not really sustainable. So so calculation one is pretty much do nothing. Number two is if you keep the dues the same and you only pass on the cost. Oh yeah, great. Oh, I'm in control of that. So if everybody pays for the complete pass through of $28.50, of course, every week we're going to be out $625, right? Okay, the club will be out $625 because we have not priced in the cost of the facility, which is $625 a week, to the cost of the meal if we do it that way, unless we pay for it in some other way. And of course, from an economic point of view, the higher the price of the meal, the less people are going to have it. It's price times quantity. Okay, so from an economic point of view. So you've got to find a price that actually makes sense. Okay, and by the way, you might wonder why I'm up here talking about it. When Bill Meyer was the president and I was secretary, he and I went through all these spreadsheets. I mean, it was a lot of fun. Okay, and as only a finance guy can find fun. And what we found is that some of the assumptions that we made allowed us to keep the price as low as it was. And that was predicated on between 100 and 120, 100 to 120 people showing up in order to spread the cost of the facility. If it's $625 a week and there's 100 people that show up, that's $6.25 a person. Just doing the math in your head. $6 right there per person if there's 100 people. If there's 50 people, it's $12 per person. If that is borne only by the people who show up to have a meal. Even though there are other things happening here, committee meetings, Zoom presentation, the speaker, organizing our community involvement. There's a lot that happens here beyond just a meal. You know this, you're talking with your friends, all these different things. If it's only borne by those eating a meal, very soon it will be unaffordable. So right off the bat, if we have 60 members at a meeting, they just pass it through, it's going to be a loss of $625 a week. The third is if we raise the dues to $150 per quarter. And by the way, let me just tell you, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but $110 a quarter, which is what you're currently paying, is $1.20 a day. $1.20 a day is what you pay in order to be a Boulder Rotarian. Okay, those are your dues. If it's $150 per quarter, that jumps up by 40 cents a day. Okay, so all of a sudden it's gone from $440 a year up to $600, 150 times 4, $600. Okay, do you guys see that? I did that in my head. So $28.50 gets passed on to you. Dues are $150 per quarter. We're going to make about $216 if 60 people show up every week. Okay, does that make sense? Because it costs us $625. There's actually, if we have 200 members that pay $150, from the 110 to about into the 140s, pays for the facility, for the office space and the meeting space that we have. And if people choose to have a meal, that is passed on 100% to them. One person eats, it's $28.50. 100 people eat, it's $2,800. Okay, a pure pass through. But the $625 every week would then be paid for by the quarterly fees as a pass through of the administrative costs of the club. Okay. If you use some of that profit of $216 in order to keep the price down, you could make the meal cost $26. So, I mean, we're not in a money-making operation here, okay? As a matter of fact, when past President Bill and I did the numbers, 4 or 5 years ago, the amount of the meal and facility cost was something like $200,000. Okay, and we added up how many people are going to show up, and we guessed on all the different types of membership, and we made the income and the expense pretty much equal, within 1,000 or 2,000 over an entire year, which was, we were pretty proud of that. Okay. And that's the whole goal, is to make the income equal to the expense. And you can do that by having the facility charge, this meeting room charge, through the dues, since everybody is a benefactor of that. Okay. Now I will tell you that 4 or 5 years ago, when we were looking at the Avalon and looking for options for it, we did an exhaustive search. Okay, when I say we, I didn't actually do it, but somebody did it. It was actually Bill and John Rieger and a few other people. And they researched like 10 or 15 different places here in Boulder. And if you think that this is easy to find a space that will consist, that has good parking, that has audio visual, that doesn't cost, $1,000 just for the audio visual, that is comfortable, that has food, that allows outside caterers, blah, blah, blah. It's not easy. Okay, there's just not very many options. There's no restaurant that's going to close on a Friday every single noon, every week at noon. That's just not going to happen. Okay, because they're going to lose money. So this is by far the premier place to be, of a very small number to choose from. Okay. Same thing with caterers. At the time, I did do a lot of research on the caterers, and there were about 5 or 6 that were at the top of the list. And when there's a number of reasons why Spice of Life was the winner then, and I believe it's still the winner now, even though I didn't interview them. But I will tell you, the number one, cost-wise and hassle-wise, they're the lowest. That's because David Rubin, if you've ever had a conversation with the president of Spice of Life, greatest guy in the world. I love him. He believes in our mission, and he reduces our cost than what you would pay someplace else. Those of you who have paid for your child's wedding or your grandchild's, it's usually more than $28 for a meal, for a catered meal. That's because he charges non-Rotarians for a very similar experience that that we receive from him, a higher amount, because he believes in it. And the greatest guy. I mean, really, the mission of Spice of Life is compatible with the mission of Boulder Rotary. So I think that's it. I'm going to be available for questions if we have them, or maybe not. And if you want to see some spreadsheets, I'm your guy. I mean, nobody ever asked, but I'd be so tickled if you did, because anyway. There's a question? Was I supposed to take questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah, Danny.
15 years ago, we had more than 200 members, I recall. Mm-hmm. And also, when we were negotiating for the meals, we had to, we generally had 130 people, as I remember, coming to the meetings, and it was maybe easier to commit to a Spice of Life or another caterer. And this $28.50 that they're charging us, is it based on 100 people, or is it just their flat rate no matter how many people we have?
Yeah, so great question. So let's look at the history of the membership of this club. When I happen to know it because I looked it up last night, so it's not like I walk around with these numbers in my head. About 5 years ago, we were at 244 members, okay? Prior to that, I've been in the club for 11 or 12 years. It used to be closer to 300. And of course, some of you who might have been in the club for many decades, it was in the 300s, okay? When it was 244, in one of the years, it dropped from 244 to about 215, boom, like that. But unfortunately, the reason why, there wasn't a problem with the club. There were some members who had been on the roll and not necessarily were current with their dues. So there's a little bit of a cleaning up that happened. It's not so much how many members we have, it actually is how many show up. Okay, so if we have 300 members and 100 show up, from an economic point of view on the cost of the meal and things of that nature, it's as if we have 100 members and 100 show up. So it's really the number that show up is the way that we've handled it in the past. Now, when we were over at Avalon, and literally within a week or so, or sorry, a month or two, we jumped from about 70 or 80 people showing up on an average week all the way up to 100 to 110, 115, 120. When we moved over from there to here, the membership actually turned around. So while Bill's year technically was a loss in members, it was all in that first half as we members that were not current on their dues, and we said, hey, you've got to be current in order to stay on the roll. It turned around to a nice J curve. And then Marty's year and my year, every year was a consistent increase in membership. The last couple of years, both John and Sally, they're not true years because they were Zoom and it was COVID the last couple of years. So the last true normal year was my year 3 years ago. And we were averaging about 120 people per meeting. Yes.
So I wonder, with COVID, we have a lot of people on Zoom, and we have, I don't know, maybe 45 or 50 here now. I'm wondering since COVID isn't likely to go away soon, what's the impact of having 45 or 50 people attend for lunch on the budget?
Yeah, this is assuming that 60 members. So we actually did how many people show up at 20, 30, 40, 120, okay? If the impact is, especially if we do the 2850 and the 625 is spread by everybody, it actually doesn't matter how many people show up, okay? Because it's neutral. The 625 is paid for by the dues. So then the number of members that is divided by is relevant, okay? 200 or 400 or 100, it matters, okay? But how many people show up doesn't really matter. If, on the other hand, we say, wow, we've got a little bit of a profit, at least at 60 members, okay? The more members that we have show up, we actually have less of a gain because we're subsidizing more people. That $2 difference is going out for more. If we have less people, we actually make more money because we have to subsidize less people. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but one of the assumptions, in anything, when you're looking about the future, of course, the future is always unknown. So you have to say, what are your assumptions and how confident are you in those assumptions? And so one of the things that Chad really did, especially over the last month, is say, what's reasonable from an assumption point of view? At 60, it's about break even if you have it at $26 per meal. If you have less than that, believe it or not, it's the subsidy is less because there's less plates. But if there's more than that, then it's possible it might flip to the other side. If there's 80 or 100 people, if we go through that subsidy. Was that the last question, or is there? Okay.
We can take more in a little bit, but I want to make sure we move on to one more.
A quick clarification. So do we or do we not have a 100-person minimum with Spice of Life right now?
No, we do not.
Okay.
We do not. So let me address that here as we get into a few more slides. So the considerations that we took into account with Mike's numbers, paying for guest meals and speakers as part of this. What happens if we lose numbers? We ran these numbers at 185. I think 185 is a really conservative number, and especially considering I feel like right now we're in a little bit of a growth spurt with membership, but we ran these numbers at 185. The next question is, what about future increases? I work in food service and hospitality, and I can tell you right now, it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse in terms of what things cost. The last thing is, this is basically a 3-month trial. We have to renegotiate our contracts in 2022. So we need 3 good months of data points to figure out if this is actually going to work. And that is, in essence, what this plan and proposal is about in terms of the time frame. So digging into the actual dues increase itself, these are pay-as-you-go meals. As Brad mentioned, the uneaten meals, and as Mike mentioned, the uneaten meals are no longer the revenue that runs the club on Fridays. The cost for the JCC is $625. Divide that over 200 members, and that comes out to $38 a quarter. If you calculate $2 additional in there for upkeep on AV for our Zoom subscription, Add that $2, you have 40. There's your 110 to 150. That's where we're getting that number from. Now for the meals, the Spice of Life is charging us $28.50. Part of our proposal is to pass that right through to our members. We want to charge what we're charged. It makes sense, right? It takes away a lot of the burden on the club. In return, we want to give everybody the ability to pay as you go, just like Roots has had, just like Active Exempts have had. The one addition here is that we're looking to give a $2.50 discount, $26 per meal, if people opt in to an auto RSVP system. Essentially, I don't want to deal with it. If we set it to Sunday at noon that you have to have your RSVP in for Friday, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to do it. Auto opt in for RSVP. Great. We're going to drop you to $26. Now we can get into a lot of the nuance of that later, but you will have the ability to opt out. Let's say you opt in and you decide that you're going to go to Mexico for a month. Can you say, I'd like to opt myself out of meals? Absolutely. You can do that as long as it's by noon, by midnight the Sunday before, or whatever we determine that number is, then you can opt yourself out as well. But that $2.50 discount is hopefully going to encourage people to opt in, to keep the cash flow of the club in better standings, and to account for the administrative costs of running an RSVP program. Vanessa and I talked about this. This is going to be more work on her. Yes, we're going to, in some ways, lose the people showing up and getting a meal. That's going to be done before they get to the JCC. But there is going to be some administrative burden on running an RSVP system. So some additional thoughts. Essentially, what we're doing is we're getting rid of membership levels of the club. There's no more Roots. There's no more Active Exempt. There's only Active Ordinary. Everybody gets the same things. Everybody gets the ability to pay as you go. Everybody pays the $150 a quarter in dues. We did consider other food vendors. We talked to other people. As Mike mentioned, David Rubin is a wonderful human being. He works with us. He won an award in this club. I think my first year that he won, and Spice of Life won an award from our club. They share in our values. They also are willing to work with us because during Mike's year, we had 100 meal minimum. They know the situation that we're in right now. If I email Amanda and I say, we're only going to have 40 this week, they're okay with it. If I say, we're going to have 100, she's going to say, that's awesome. Congratulations. We're going to make it happen. So they're willing to work with us, and they're also cheaper. Other meeting locations, as Mike mentioned, this is our home. If Boulder Rotary is the best place to be on a Friday afternoon, then the JCC shares in part of making that happen. And then the last thing is that, yes, this is a 3-month trial, essentially. We're going to have to go through some of these same hurdles in 2022. And part of our thinking in laying this out here was to potentially account for any changes that might come in 3 months. So with that being said, I think it's time to take a vote. Everybody has papers on the table. I suppose we could take a few quick questions. Yeah.
I know the Roots disappears as an entity, but do those members remain Rotarians using the same system?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There was one question online from Linda Nails. And she asked, what is she, sorry. Let me find it. She said, can we attend the meeting and opt out of meals?
Yes.
Thank you.
We're trying to make meetings as accessible as possible for everybody. And if that means that you want to come and not eat, we'd like to make that happen. Now, the caveat here is we may have to work out a situation where if all of a sudden 30 people start showing up and they have an RSVP'd, we may have to figure out how the table situation is going to work. So we're not all rolling tables out here at 12:05 p.m. But yes.
Hello, there, okay. I just wanted to point out to everybody that this was incredibly hard work. And Chad did a great job leading us, and that, like he said, there's been countless hours of the board meeting and thinking about how do we make this super fair, and I just really want to give Chad a hand for doing all this.
Yeah, thank you, Sally. I was going to say the same thing in return to you and in return to the board and the past presidents who have counseled on a lot of this, and to Brad for making sure that the numbers add up, and for Mike and his spreadsheet wizardry. The Who should write a song called like Spreadsheet Wizard. That would be Mike Brady. But yes, and especially to you, Sally, too, because you've really helped me kind of make sure the numbers are right and kept me on track with my thinking. So thank you to everybody for, this is a massive group effort to come up with these numbers and these ideas.
I'm a retired workout banker, and I've sat through hundreds of presentations, including from multi-billion-dollar corporations. And this was one of the most clear and well thought out set of projections that I have seen. So
thank you for that.
I then have a couple of suggestions for going forward. You mentioned that this is a 3-month trial. What I would be thinking about in the next round, is there something else other than this, and this appears to work, that would be a seamless transition from COVID to non-COVID? In other words, something that works forever, including if there's another COVID in 3 years.
That's a great point. Based on the spreadsheet that Mike had, there are actually breakpoints. If we start having 100 and 120 people here, depending on the situation, the club could actually lose money. So that is a great point, and that's something that when we meet on this again in 3 months, 2 months, let's just start next week. That's something we're going to have to consider for sure.
Okay. You talked about this program of paying just, I don't know what it was, $21, and that would be automatically assumed that you would come, or opting out for a particular period of time. That's part of what you're talking about, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Chad, this is Mike Simpson on Zoom.
Hey, Mike. How's the cyber world?
Hey, we're doing fine, and thanks for enabling us to do this both in person and on Zoom. I'm very supportive of what you've advocated. I just would like to add another reason why this makes sense going beyond your 3 months. I will tell you that I would not have rejoined Rotary if there hadn't been the rule of 85. And I'm glad we're going to go to everybody being able to pay as you go. And I'm glad we're going to do one category. But so many of us have jobs that make us travel a lot, or we're retired or semi-retired and not here large parts of the year. That pay as you go really makes more sense, and transferring administrative expenses to dues is just good accounting. And so thank you for the work you put in, but I hope you don't just see this as a COVID response, because frankly, I've had 3 people I attempted to recruit to this club who all declined ultimately because paying for meals they didn't eat just didn't work for them. So congratulations on a good step for good reasons. And you've already got my yes vote sent to Cassidy.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And I actually agree with you. I think one of the benefits of this is beyond COVID. I think this lowers the barrier of entry to the club. And I think ultimately it's going to help with membership.
My question has to do with guests. I know that our speaker, the one that will talk about the Olympics on November 5, is planning on bringing a lot of guests, and that's wonderful. So I would not want him to pay for those guests, but I would be glad to do so. So that would pertain to anybody with a speaker with guests. Do we charge them the $28.50, or if we RSVP for them as guests, does that take it to $26? I just want to get my bank statement prepared.
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't fully vetted how that's going to work yet. My feeling, hospitality is important to me, and to have a speaker come here and make them pay for their own meal doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like the Rotary way. I will say that there is some variance in the numbers where a couple of guest meals are most likely going to be fine and be covered. In certain situations, if there's a president's discretionary fund, that in certain occasions I would be happy to use that to be hospitable to speakers. So I agree with you, and the short answer is I don't exactly know how yet, but I agree with the sentiment for sure.
Chad, on that point, I'll just make a comment. The option of auto, I forget how you phrased it, auto RSVPing and being charged $26 a week rather than $28, whatever it was. One thing for some of us to consider, those of us that may be in a position to do it, is not opt out when you're not here. I mean, I've been paying for 20 years for however many, 48 meals a year, 46, whatever it was. I would suggest there may be some of us, and some of us can't afford it. I understand that, and it's a personal thing. But one way to cover some of this is to build up a little bit of cushion by those of us that are able and willing to not opt out when you're not here. Just pay for it, like we have for the last 20 years. And that'll help build up a little cushion for guests and some of the other things.
Yeah, yep. So what essentially this is, and I agree with you, Bill, like me personally, I don't want to have the hassle of opting in for a meal. I'd rather do it in perpetuity so I don't have to think about it, because I know I'm going to forget, I'm going to show up on Friday, and I'm going to starve to death. And I don't really want that happening, so I'm kidding. But the reality is what we're asking people to do is opt in to what is the old active ordinary. And, yes, I agree with you. I think making it a little bit more enticing financially is part of it too, because as I said, there are administrative costs, and we do want to make sure that the club is in good cash flow, as Brad has walked us through that too, to make sure that we're not getting in a pickle.
Hey, Chad, I've got a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Bill Sebastian. I'm wondering, as a longtime Roots member, what was done to kind of mitigate any ongoing issues with this new structure that you're proposing?
Could you repeat that, Bill?
I'm wondering about Roots and non-conforming members, and how it was looked at initially in the studies that you did to come up with where we are today. And also, if there's, based on that, is there anything in the next 3 months that we could do in order to make sure that the non-conforming members are at least thought of in our ultimate solution?
So if I think I understand your question correctly, Roots is going to continue as it is, but not under Roots. You're going to have the same benefits as you had with Roots, operating under the same way. The only difference is your dues costs are going to change, and when you drop in for meals, they're going to change. And that goes for everybody in the club.
So I was wondering if there could be a step up. You've probably really looked at this quite heavily. So I'm thinking that we can carry this into the next 3 months and make sure that everything is working, and that if there is anybody that we're potentially going to lose in Roots, that we could, at least look at their business case and see if there's anything that we can do.
Bill, your audio is breaking out. I really didn't hear the question. Maybe if you want to circle up via email or offline, we can go over that, if that's okay.
Yes,
Okay.
let's do that. Thanks.
Chad, I just want to say real quick, when I first came on as the bookkeeper, I looked at the attendance, and I think there were probably 20 people that hadn't attended a meeting in probably a year, but had always paid the full dues. And I was a little concerned about those 20 people, so I brought them to Marty, because she's the caring committee, and she said, oh no, this person's fine, this person's healthy, this person's good, they just can't make it to the meeting. And so I'm just following up on Bill Meyer's point that it helps.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is also an opportunity to reach out to some of those people and check in on them, see how they're doing, see if we can't help them get to the meetings. I mean, coming to the meetings is important. We want people to come if they can. And this is the backbone of the club. This is what we get every week. And it's a constant, it's stable, and in many ways, this is why we're all part of the club.
John Reader has a question about opting out of meals. If you don't opt out, the spice
Yes, basically we're going to take a number Monday at noon most likely, and I'm going to send that number to Amanda, and that's going to be our total for the week. Any other questions? Why don't we move on? Nancy, I know you're, oh, one more.
Okay, what I'm talking about is that if you don't opt out and you stay in, but you decide not to come, and the club is going to get more money, but if the club doesn't know you're not coming, you end up still buying the meal because you end up ordering it. So if you decide not to come and stay in, you need to let the club know.
Yes, if you want to opt out of a particular meal, if you're opted in to automatic RSVP, then you have to let the club know, just like somebody who's not in automatic RSVP has to let us know they are coming to the meeting.
Chad, can I just say quickly on that point, it's Bill. I think that Bill Myers talked about how in the past, we knew we had a certain number of folks who were likely to come, even though we had a greater number that were paying for meals. In the same way, as we get further down the road in time, we'll be able to assess and understand of the people who auto RSVP, are we getting 90% on average? Are we getting 85% on average? And we'll be able to adjust what we order from Spice to account for that, which I think addresses your point a little bit, Hank. And so over time, that may create some of the surplus that helps run things. But we're so early in the process now that we need more data in order to be able to do that effectively. But there is always a little bit of overage from Spice of Life. So hopefully as we get a little further down the road, we'll be able to really dial that in. So just wanted to make that point because I know some folks had some questions about that.
And does Spice
Thank you.
still donate the food that's left over?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. It doesn't go to waste.
No. Thank you.
I take it to my truck later. Are we good with the tallies? Can we run the brew now?
Yes, we have
Okay.
a quorum and
Nancy, if you can hear us in the cyber world, due to time constraints, we're going to have to push this to next week. George Garmany just brought me a sheet of paper that says he's willing to wait until next week. We're passing notes in Boulder Rotary now. This is great. So if we can just run the brew,
I'm
that would be
here for
awesome.
you guys, but I got it all set up. So I knew this is a really important meeting, so I'm glad we spent time with the questions with everyone.
Thanks, Nancy.
The Boulder Rotary Update is brought to you by the three amigos, Fred Hall, Cassidy Murphy, and me, Mike Brady. If you have something that you feel the club should know, an update, a committee meeting that you'd like to advertise or recruit members for, please email me at mike@generositywealth.com. I go ahead and put the agenda on and take most of the credit. Fred and Cassidy actually do all the work. Hey, Fred, you probably want to edit that out so that they don't know that's the way it works. One of the things that we've missed because of COVID the last couple of years is our student exchange program through Rotary. It's where some of our high school students that are selected by the district go to other countries and represent our districts and our country, and they have students that come to our district. Just to give you an idea of the cultural exchange that happens, we happen to have a dinner that was recorded from one of the exchange students who visited us from France.
Hi. Now, in honor of our special guest, I've created dinner mondiaux. First, we have French fries and French dressing and French bread. And to drink, ta-da, Peru.
That is just one example of the high caliber cultural exchange through the exchange program. Right now, they are accepting applications for high school students for next year, the 2022-2023 school year. Talk to Chad at rotary@chadstam.com. Should be up on the screen. If you have an eligible high school student that you feel would be great for this exchange to go from here over to another country.
Next week, the Peacebuilding and Preserve Planet Earth committees will have a joint meeting on Friday, October 8th at 10:30 a.m. at the JCC to hear from guest speakers Tsigai Hailu and Peter Van Arsdale. They're going to speak about the conflict and humanitarian crisis in Tigray, Ethiopia, and how Rotarians might be able to help. More than 5.2 million people in Tigray, Ethiopia are in dire need of humanitarian support due to a conflict that erupted at the end of 2020. Everyone is welcome to the meeting. You don't have to be a committee member to attend. Come a little early next week and hear how we can help. Do you remember way back in 2020, there was COVID, no toilet paper, murder hornets, Zoom? Amidst all of that chaos, there was also the U.S. Census. Now, we're at the next step, redistricting. What does that mean? Why should you care? Well, next week, we're all going to find out. Don't miss next week's program, Redistricting.
Enjoy the fall colors. In the meantime, all together now, have a great weekend.
Thanks, Three Amigos. So the election results are back. We did indeed have a quorum, and I'm happy to say that everybody unanimously supports this. So let's stay tuned for the next steps and what's going to happen. But thanks, everybody, for your support and for listening today. And I just want to reiterate some thanks to the board, to past presidents Mike Brady and Sally Brown, to Brad Weasley for helping with the numbers, and to the whole group of past presidents that when we have our discussions, it's been really helpful, so I appreciate that. I'd also like to thank today's past president greeters, Mike Brady and Dr. Bob Murphy. Thanks to Gloria Thrall and Judy Pitt for desk and registration. Thanks to Fred, John, and Lynn for meeting management. And I have a note that says round of applause for last week. Yes, round of applause for last week. Thanks for pulling off the dual in-person Zoom speaker situation. That was really incredible, and I just wanted to make sure I said thanks for that. Thanks to Chris Coker for promoting the raffle, and thanks to Vanessa and Cassidy for handling all the ballots and the voting. So thank you all. Have a great weekend.